Levack and Goss here with you on 104.5. The team, and joining us now, he's an ESPN college basketball studio host and analyst. Dalen joins us. And Dalen, let's get into it, man. Who is the best team in the country right now in college basketball?
I mean, Tom, that changes almost hourly right now. It's been a wild year. I mean, chaos is the new norm in college hoops. If I had to pick a team that I feel best about when we get to the middle and the end of March, I think I'm going to have to go with Villanova. I think with Phil Booth gets healthy, I think that team has, in my mind, the best player of the year in Jalen Brunson right now. Mikal Bridges, Dante DiVincenzo, they have pros. They have a tremendous culture. They know what they're all about. The question is, can they stay out of foul trouble and can they make enough shots? And that's been the interesting thing with this season in college hoops is there's just a small margin of error for Villanova and for Virginia, who have been the two most dominant teams for the course of the year. There's just a real small margin of error. If they don't make enough shots, they are not talented. They can't just overwhelm you. They're not that athletic. They're not that talented. They're not that deep that they can just overwhelm teams. They have to play well. And in years past, we've seen some dominant teams that can get away without playing well and find a way to win. Duke comes to mind because Duke's the most talented team, but they really struggle to guard. So at times, like, they can overwhelm you, but at the same time, if they can't get a stop on the other end, you can outscore them at times. So if I had to pick a best team, I'm picking Villanova right now. But they are going through some troubles like everybody else because of health issues and whatnot.
So you bring up Villanova and you bring up Brunson, who a lot of college basketball people who are following it this season believe he is the player of the year, like you mentioned there. But there's another player in Trae Young at Oklahoma whose team is continuing to lose. I think it's like now 8 of 10 games. Has the losing by the Sooners cost Trae Young that player of the year award?
Well, that's how you word that question is kind of unfair because it's not the losing by the Sooners. He's part of the team that's struggling. I mean, he did say the other day, and then they've actually now, I think, lost 9 of 11 after losing last night to Kansas. He did say that, you know, he is being scouted and he is being guarded like nobody in the country, and that is very true. I mean, we are, when I say we, ESPN, it's a gift and a curse, man. I mean, since he burst on the scene, dropping 40 points in games and 10 assists and 14 assists and 22 assists, we've been all over him. And that don't think that doesn't have a negative effect in terms of guys getting up to play him. Now, the Big 12 is brutal, but, you know, every time he walks into that building, the fans are all over him. Even in his hometown where he was born, Lubbock, Texas, they were brutal to him. Those teams are dying to show that he is not all that, especially with great guards in that league. Devontae Graham in Kansas. Keenan Evans, who I think, is the player of the year in the Big 12. So you were talking about Trae Young being the player of the year in the country. I don't think he's the player of the year in his conference.
Wow.
I think it goes to Keenan Evans right now in Texas Tech. That guy's been phenomenal on both sides of the ball and consistent all year long. But back to my point, guys are hyped up to play against him. And he is being scouted like nobody else and guarded like nobody else. And he has struggled. And bear in mind, I remember my freshman year, too, you're just not used to this type of grind. And when it gets to February, your body does not feel the same. I mean, you just there's no way. And the way that he plays and has to play for that team, he's got the highest usage rate. The ball is constantly in his hands. The team is dependent upon him. And when he struggles, they struggle. And that's just the fact of the matter. So, I mean, there has to be something said for winning. That's why I say Brunson gets player of the year. That has to be something said for winning. That's why Texas Tech, who I think might, if they win on Saturday, edge out Kansas and find a way to win a Big 12 title. Keenan Evans gets my Big 12 player of the year. Trae's been phenomenal. He's a transcendent player, but, you know, that team right now is struggling because he is struggling. And defensively, it's not all him. Defensively, they are terrible. There's no other way to say it. They go through strings of possessions where they just do not guard. And he is sometimes guilty of that because he's out there floating around trying to save it for offense. But as a team, they have just had defensive breakdown, and that's on the squad. That's not just on Trae.
There are so many storylines in that Big 12 conference. Maybe Kansas finally losing that streak of regular season conference titles. Maybe Trae Young not winning the player of the year. The Big 12 has so much stuff going on, and of course, we're so close to the NCAA tournament getting underway. And Dalen joins us here on the phone lines on 104.5 The Team. I know basketball fans are hoping to see Trae Young, although the Sooners are struggling. But I know here in upstate New York, we're hoping to see the Syracuse Orange in the NCAA tournament. They got a big game coming up against the North Carolina Tar Heels, and then they have the Duke Blue Devils over the weekend. If Syracuse can grab one of those two wins against Carolina or Duke, is that enough to consider them an NCAA tournament-worthy team?
You know, I always trust my boy Joey Brackets, Joe Lenardi. He's our bracketologist, and he's right on usually 66, 67 of the 68 teams. And I would say that he has Syracuse in as one of the last 4 in right now. I think it's really tight. I think then against the top 50, I know that metric is not the same anymore with the quadrant 1 and quadrant 2, but they are 3 and 5 against the top 50 in the RPI. They have, they have some good wins. They have some tough losses too. Bear in mind. So to your point, I think they have to split with Duke and North Carolina to feel good. But they do have opportunities. They have Clemson to finish the season, too. And Clemson's on their top 25 type team. So they have opportunities 3 of these last 4 games, and they can't slip up against CC. But with North Carolina coming into the Carrier Dome, the key is they're going to have to rebound the ball to Orange Arc. Because North Carolina, although they played a little bit smaller, and they put Cam Johnson at the 4, and they can really shoot the 3, and they rely on the 3, which can hurt Syracuse, obviously. You got to rebound the ball. North Carolina still is second in the league in offensive rebounding percentage. Syracuse is toward the bottom in defensive rebounding percentage. So rebounding is going to be a massive key, making them take contested threes because they are going to take them, and then they got to get out in transition and try to score quickly. North Carolina will want to play at a fast pace. Syracuse will want to control tempo, but they have to be opportunistic in how they approach the offensive end of the court. North Carolina has had some real slip-ups defensively. They've had their struggles through the course of the year. That's what precipitated, I think, this change by Roy Williams to go smaller and go older and use some of those young front court guys 1 at a time instead of 2 at a time. But you can score on them early, and you can score on them in the half court. The thing is, obviously, Frank Howard and Tyus Battle have to have great games. A lot of things have to break their way. I mean, Syracuse is barely a tournament team. North Carolina is coming on as a team that could contend and get in the Final Four, who 3 weeks ago looked like a team that was really struggling, but they've made some tweaks, and they're on the upswing right now. So it's going to be a really tough game. They have to get that one at home. I don't think there's any way they're winning at Duke, and then they have to wind up with beat BC, and I think Clemson, that final game, could be where their season hinges. Obviously, the ACC tournament offers more opportunities, but if you want to feel good about going into that ACC tournament, you got to get at least one of these 2 games against them, and I think you got to beat Clemson, too, to feel really good.
Now, that game's coming up on Wednesday, but there's no days off for Dalen Cuff. You're working tonight. Where can people catch you on ESPN?
We're on the Deuce tonight, ESPN2, 9 o'clock Eastern. Missouri is hosting Ole Miss. Interesting game on the call with Tom Hart. Ole Miss's coach, Andy Kennedy, for the last 12 years, just resigned effective immediately on Sunday. So Tony Madlock steps in, new coach situation at Ole Miss. So interested to get to shoot around and talk to coach and see what's going on there. Obviously, they've gone through a really tough year, and Kennedy felt that he couldn't reach this team, so he has stepped aside. That said, the bigger story really is Conzo Martin's first year at Missouri. He's got this team in position to be an NCAA tournament team. They're right there on the cusp. Cassius Robertson is a transfer from up your way, Canisius, grad transfer that has been one of the best grad transfers in the country. And he's 4th in the nation in scoring in terms of guys that grad transferred. He's been really a revelation for this team. He sets the tempo on offense. He can knock down shots. He gets his teammates involved. Bear in mind, this team's playing without Michael Porter Jr., but they've only had him for 2 minutes of the season. They learned how to play without him, and they've been pretty good. They can knock down the 3. They've got good length. But again, this is a game they have to win at home if they want to continue this trend to get to the NCAA tournament. You cannot have a slip-up against an Ole Miss team that is reeling, to say the least. Now,
you're with Tom Hart tonight. When I usually see you, you're with another Tom, and that's Coach Tom Crean. And for those that may not know, he is an in-law of Michigan head coach Jim Harbaugh. Have you gotten any Harbaugh stories from behind the scenes, like what Harbaugh's like at a usual family Thanksgiving?
Coach Crean's the man. Let's just say that first and foremost. Love working with him. Nothing that's that revolutionary about Coach Harbaugh, but I will tell you this. Coach Crean is a student of the game, but he is a student of coaches, which I found very interesting. He goes and sits through, whether it's practices or walkthroughs or meetings of all types of different coaches across all different sections, whether it be his brothers-in-law with John and Jim Harbaugh, or if it's Nick Saban, or he reads books about soccer coaches, and he was mentioning Bruce Boudreau, who's the coach for the Minnesota Wild, a hockey coach. He's reading his book, so he's quoting him the other day in the studio. He is a student of coaching and teaching and methods in which to teach whatever it is, whatever your sport is, whatever your game is, whatever your passion is, to teach to others. So it's been it's been really interesting and eye-opening working with him. I don't have any fun anecdotes for you off the top of my head, but I would say that Coach Crean is an absolute character, and I request this all the time, and won't do it. If we could put him on camera when the games are going on and you guys aren't seeing him, it is absolutely hysterical. My man is amped up. He's yelling at the TV like coaches do. Get over the screen. He's screaming this. He's screaming that. It's like he's in a stance sometimes. My man is hyped. But unfortunately, our producers and directors won't put that on air. I think that's better TV, but, I'm
all for it, too. You can catch him in the studio with Tom Crean. You can catch him on the Deuce tonight. And I'm sure as we get closer and closer to March, we're going to talk to him more and more and more. Dalen Cuff, best of luck on the call tonight. We'll be talking again soon.
Thanks a lot, Tom. Have a good one.